Welcome to Batya on NewsNation. I am Batya, and we begin with what we learned about America this week. President Trump earned the ire of some of his most ardent defenders during an interview with Fox News' Laura Ingraham this week when he came out in support of H-1B visas.
If you want to raise wages for American workers, you can't flood the country with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of foreign workers.
But you also do have to bring in talent. When
we
a
have
country
plenty of talented people
you
here.
don't. No, you don't.
We don't have talented people here?
No, you don't have certain talents, and people have to learn. You can't take people off an unemployment line and say, I'm going to put you into a factory where we're going to make missiles.
The president is defending exactly the kind of thinking that his base elected him to reverse here. The idea that we need to look elsewhere for talent that we can't find here at home. This is the logic that led to America issuing close to 1 million H-1B visas to foreign workers who drove down the wages in STEM, such that our own most talented young people now migrate away from those industries. It's simply a myth that those million visa holders are the best and the brightest. They're an indentured servant caste for huge multi-billion-dollar corporations who don't want to pay a middle-class wage or deal with workers who can make demands. Far from being smarter than Americans, a study out of Stanford found that Americans are still scoring higher on STEM than Indian and Chinese students who make up the majority of H-1B visa holders. The elites like to stress that there's a difference between legal and illegal immigration, a difference between the worst of the worst and the guys looking for work in the Home Depot parking lot. But the truth is, as the H-1B visas clearly illustrate, both legal and illegal immigrants drive down the wages of working-class Americans. It's something that Democratic socialist Senator Bernie Sanders, no fan of Donald Trump, knew as recently as 2015 when he called open borders a Koch brothers proposal. Bernie told Ezra Klein, what right-wing people in this country would love is an open border policy, bring in all kinds of people, have them work for $2 or $3 an hour. That would be great for them. I don't believe in that, said Sanders. Though he's since changed his tune, Bernie was right. That's why the majority of Americans in every poll this year support deporting every illegal migrant. Not the worst of the worst, every single one. It's not because they're haters. Compare the graph of working class wages to the graph of mass immigration to this country, and you'll see an inverse correlation. Why? Because of exactly what Bernie Sanders said. Immigration drives down the wages of the working class. It's been particularly devastating for Black employment, as civil rights activists used to point out. And that is what we learned about America this week. The issues animating the MAGA base are still the same. It's affordability, which means it's wages, which means it's immigration. Here to discuss is Brian Tyler Cohen. He's one of the biggest progressive commentators, and I am just so thrilled to have him here. Brian, welcome, and thank you so much for joining Batya. So I guess my first question to you is, have I put you in the awkward position of agreeing with President Donald Trump on H-1B visas?
I mean, look, I think that we do need more immigration in this country. We have seen the extent to which Trump's policies on immigration are increasingly unpopular. I think the latest poll from AP showed that 57% of Americans disapprove with him and 47% of Americans approve of what he's doing. So, I'm sorry, 42% of Americans approve of what he's doing. So he's underwater 15 points on the way that he's handled immigration. On this specific issue, do I think that we need H-1B visas? Absolutely. I think that the more talent we can bring into this country, the stronger this country will be. I think that goes without saying.
So, Brian, I guess my question is, in a larger way, what is the Democratic position on immigration right now? The open border policy of Joe Biden, I think many Democrats now will admit, was sort of a mistake. Is it time to return to the kind of Sanders circa 2015 view that mass migration does hurt the working class? Or where does the Democrat position stand right now? And what is the best way to advance the issue?
I'm not sure exactly what the specific position of the Democratic Party is right now. I can say that what we're doing right now is not it. And again, that's reflective in how Democrats, in how Americans more broadly are perceiving all of this. is certainly a middle ground between an influx of folks at the border, which obviously was unpopular, and we saw that reflected in the polling of the end of Joe Biden's presidency. But what's happening now, where there are just, where we're promised hardened criminals are going to be deported, and instead it's hardworking folks, it's folks working in food services, it's folks working in construction, people going to work and performing services that the rest of the country benefits from. The notion that that is anywhere near where we need to be is kind of a farce. And frankly, the reality is that Trump took office with immigration being one of his strongest issues. I mean, he was 10 points, 11 points, in the positive when it came to immigration. The fact that he's polling 15 points below, that we've seen a 25-point swing in immigration, indicates that what he's doing is not reflective of what this country wants, not reflective of what he promised this country.
Do you disagree with the Bernie position from 2015 that having so many illegal immigrants, being hardworking people in those industries, drives down the wages for the Americans working in those industries? And if you don't agree with that, why don't you think that that's a problem?
I don't agree with the Bernie Sanders position. I think that we need more workers. We need immigrants in this country who are willing to work. I think that strengthens our economy. We have seen the extent to which the opposite is taking effect right now, when we have fewer immigrants because they're being deported, we are watching the economy falter. We're seeing jobs. Look. If what Trump was doing right now was helping the economy, we wouldn't have seen the economy lose 11,000 jobs every week in October, to the point where Trump won't even release the numbers. Those numbers had to be found elsewhere because the Trump Bureau of Labor Statistics wouldn't even release them. And so if what Trump was doing was correct right now, we would see the economy strengthening. We would see, as he continues to deport people, as he continues to strike fear in the hearts of these immigrants, that jobs would surge among Americans. And the absolute opposite is happening right now.
So I want to call your attention to a study. I'm sure you saw it. It was from a progressive group that was looking at how to get Democrats elected. And this one chart was really arresting to me. It had sort of the gap between what voters are looking for and what the Democratic Party is invested in right now. So if you look at the top there in the green, you have the issues that the Democrats are focused on, which is climate change, voting rights, civil liberties and privacy, race relations, and guns. Then you look at the bottom, which is all the way at the other end of the graph, which is where the majority of American voters are invested, what their issues are. And you have taxes and government spending, budget deficit, drug abuse, gas prices, crime, terrorism, immigration, and border security. And this graph really represents to me kind of this gulf between at least how the Democrats are perceived by the electorate versus the issues that Americans themselves are very worried about. As a progressive, what do you make of this chart and that gap?
Look, I think that when I look at a chart like that, I can see not necessarily what the tunnel visioned focus of the Democratic Party is, and that Democrats will wake up every day and just want to talk about climate change. It's where Democrats are better, and certainly Democrats are better on climate change. Certainly Democrats are better on gun safety reforms, on health care, whatever it may be. But the reality is that we saw in this past election cycle that Americans have soured on this idea that what Republicans said they were for in 2024 is what they were actually for. I mean, Trump ran an entire campaign predicated on this idea that he was laser focused on affordability. This guy spoke about the cost of housing, the cost of rent, the cost of groceries, that beautiful word that nobody had ever heard before, the cost of eggs. And yet what did he do when he came into office? He built himself a $350 million ballroom. He encrusted the Oval Office in gold, retrofitting a Qatari jet to the tune of $1 billion that we all have to pay for, hosted Gatsby parties at the White House. And so this guy isn't focused on affordability. This guy's presided over a moment right now where food assistance is on the verge of being taken away, where 17 million Americans are losing their access to Medicaid, where 24 million Americans right now are waiting for 2026 so that they can see their premiums double, triple, quadruple. And so we've seen a campaign where Trump and the Republican Party have staked so much of their brands on this idea that they cared about affordability, and they don't. They have the opportunity right now over the last 10 months to prove that they do. Meanwhile, you have the Democrats who are laser focused on exactly that, who are laser focused on making sure that health care is affordable. They just ran a 40-day shutdown campaign to try and force Republicans to make sure that health care premiums don't double or triple. And you've got Republicans that were so hell-bent on making sure that they did triple, to the point where Democrats are like, we got to open the government back up because they're never going to relent. And so, look, we have seen instances where we've been promised one thing and the Republicans have delivered another. I think Americans are wising up to the fact that when Democrats go out there on the campaign trail and say that they're going to be focused on affordability, that folks actually believe them. The results in Virginia, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Maine, California all show that after this past Tuesday.
So you guys had a great Tuesday. I think, to me, the starkest distinction was between, you had Zohran Mamdani in New York running on affordability, but as a democratic socialist, far left. And then you had, Abigail Spanberger, Mikey Sherrill running really as centrists, as people who reach across the aisle, as people who intend to represent everyone and appeal to everybody. So I guess my question for you is, which is the direction the Democrats should be leaning into thinking about 2026 and 2028?
They should lean into wherever they best reflect or represent their constituents. I think that you're going to have somebody who's more liberal in New York City versus what you'll have in Virginia. That's okay. That's the benefit of being in a big tent party, is that you're going to have candidates who represent a broad swath of the spectrum that is the American electorate. And so I think, it doesn't have to be or, it can be and we saw that reflective, this past Tuesday.
Brian, God bless and protect you. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Up next, how I overcame my Trump derangement syndrome. I used to be pretty woke. I had the TDS, the Trump derangement syndrome. I thought everybody who voted for Donald Trump was a racist. All that changed when I encountered a Yale study in 2018. The study found that there was a difference between how white liberals and white conservatives talk when they talk to black people. Now, when I saw the headline, I was jubilant. We got 'em. That's what I thought. Turns out the opposite was true. The study found that when white liberals talk to black people, they do something called presenting lower competence. They dumb down their vocabulary using fewer syllables than they do when they talk to white people. And white conservatives don't do this. I remember seeing the study and thinking with horror, and we liberals call conservatives racist? What could be more racist than the patronizing view that black people need to be protected from our big vocabularies? Yet it was this patronizing view that minorities are oppressed and in need of saving that I could suddenly see was at play in much of the progressive worldview. It caused me to think, well, if I'm wrong about conservatives being racist, what else might I be wrong about? A lot, it turns out, including my next guest. I spoke to Dana Loesch this week, the former doyen of the National Rifle Association. As my woke liberal self, Dana was enemy number one. Now she's one of the most moral voices protecting the right from embracing its far fringe. Here is some of our conversation. Dana Loesch, thank you so much for joining me. It's so great to be here with you.
Batya, thank you so much for having me. And I'm so happy that you came around, and it just warms my heart. I love that.
So we're going to talk a lot about that, but I did want to start with something that you've been making waves about recently. So it all sort of started when Tucker Carlson had Nick Fuentes, a notable white nationalist and Holocaust denier, on his show a couple weeks ago. And then the head of Heritage, Kevin Roberts, supported Carlson platforming Fuentes in what was a very cozy interview. You were one of many people who called Roberts out, but you took it one step further. You had him on his show. And Dana, you did what I think is maybe one of the best interviews, just from a journalistic point of view, that I've ever seen in my life. The way that you just calmly broke down the flaws in his thinking, it was remarkable. We have a little clip of that. Let's take a look at that.
You said that you wouldn't have Nick on if you had a show. You wouldn't have had him on your program. Why?
There's very little common ground
But if we're supposed to have these ideas out in the
Heritage
public
stands for.
square and examine them, why wouldn't you have him on your program?
Well, I would rather talk about the ideas in a forum at Heritage or some other event.
Is it venomous
just
to say
really-
that you hate Christian Zionists?
Oh, of course it is.
Because Tucker said those things. So that would be, I mean, is that not sowing division?
It's certainly not helpful, but it doesn't mean that he ought to be canceled, because if in fact
Well, that's
you
not
want
the
to
question.
persuade
It's not whether
someone-
he should be canceled. Is that sowing division to say things like that?
Oh, it's certainly.
What was going through your mind when you were conducting that interview?
Well, I will give some credit to Kevin Roberts for agreeing to do it, because he had to have known that, you know, I'm always going to be a nice hostess. I'm not going to go and ambush somebody on my show, but I'm going to ask the difficult questions. And I was trying to reconcile how he was saying the things that he was saying with the positions that he actually held. For instance, you know, in that clip, he's talking about, well, we have to discuss these ideas, but yet he actually didn't want to discuss those ideas. And his whole objection was resting on this presupposition that these were ideas that were even A, worthy of being embraced momentarily for consideration and debate, and B, that these were ideas that weren't already defeated in May of 1945. And that's what really was astounding to me, because not every idea, especially one that has been prosecuted and defeated worldwide, there's nothing new. It's the same stuff. It's just being regurgitated behind this veneer of nationalism. So why are we pretending otherwise? And it just seemed to me that it was a weak ploy to try to get a slice of that digital economy by, you know, flirting around with these ideas, which then legitimizes them to mainstream audiences. And that was the real objection. And so trying to make him understand that this is how we're viewing this. You're holding this position that we should be discussing these ideas and having these debates, simultaneously denying that same thing on your platform for the most obvious reason. So I walked away with it thinking, well, he really agreed with me on this. Actually, he doesn't agree. He agrees with me. He doesn't agree with himself. But I don't think that he ever recognized that.
I totally agree with you. I don't think that this is a fight about values. I think it's a media turf war for people on the right, that it's really conservatives versus content creators. It's not like right on right, you know, violence or what have you. Who's winning?
I think they've blinked. I think they have blinked. I mean, when you have to move the goalpost as many times as I've seen people do over the past couple of weeks, that's not a move that's, you know, characteristic of strength or of winning the argument, when you constantly have to reframe what you're saying and reshape your answers. I think that the way that you described it is, I think that's the perfect encapsulation. You have a bunch of people who are worried about audience capture. They're terrified that they are going to be moved out of that digital economy, which incentivizes controversy and rewards controversy within the algorithm. That rewards it with clicks, that rewards it with money, it rewards it with influence. And so instead of being thoughtful, people are encouraged to be more conspiracy minded. It's like idiocracy in action. You know, that's what we're seeing. And I had a really interesting conversation a couple of months ago with my friend Brent Bozell, who is over at Media Research Center. And he made a great point in that a lot of what we're seeing with this content that's, being, pushed online is that there's not an intellectual mooring. And that's the difference between a lot of what we're seeing now and what we've seen with open and free discussion previously, like in 2010 and even before then. There's always been this intellectual mooring. There's always been this smart place that everybody can kind of, rope off on. And, you can have these debates, and that's absent in a lot of this. I mean, it's just brain slop. I mean, are we seriously going to sit here and talk about chemtrails, for crying out loud? Are we going to seriously entertain the idea that Stalin is worthy of admiration? I mean, these are barbaric ideas that were promoted. The idea of that somehow Hitler, like you can be Team Hitler, These are barbarian ideas that have been defeated in the court of public opinion over and over again, and there's no reason to go and dig them out of the grave now and repurpose them for the purpose of dividing the right. And that, Batya, that's what all of this is about. It's twofold, actually, maybe even three. You have the fight over the digital economy. You have the power jockeying already underway to try to get something in place after Trump's influence wanes when he terms out. And then, of course, you have this division between the United States and one of our greatest allies, and also dividing the right so that you can further destabilize culture in the United States. And there are a lot of people who are too busy navel-gazing to pay attention to that psyop, and they're getting hooked, line, and sinkered by it.
Dana Loesch, God bless you and protect you. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Batya. It's an honor. And thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Ahead, are you allowed to kill drug dealers trying to murder your fellow citizens? Our panel will debate. Our cousins across the pond are very angry with us. According to a CNN report, the UK is no longer sharing intelligence with the United States about drug boats in the Caribbean because we keep killing drug-dealing terrorists before they can kill American citizens. Like many Democrats, the Brits have apparently decided it's unacceptable for America to prevent 100,000 fentanyl deaths unless they double-check that the drug dealers' passports are stamped with carrier of fentanyl. The criticism, in my view, is insane. A recent study found that the top issues for American voters were border security, terrorism, crime, and drug addiction. Bombing boats and eviscerating drug dealers hits every single one of those priorities. Let the Brits tisk over procedure or whatnot. I'll be thinking of those forgotten Americans succumbing to deaths of despair because their government didn't care enough to defend them from the scourge of fentanyl until now. Here with us is Democratic strategist and former advisor to Bill and Hillary Clinton, Richard Goodstein, and political commentator and senior fellow at Frontiers of Freedom, Scotty Nell Hughes. Welcome to you both. Thank you both for joining me. Richard, what am I missing here?
So if you had someone from Venezuela or any other country cross the U.S. border lined with drugs in their coat, that's not a capital offense. You couldn't just authorize somebody to shoot and kill them on their own authorization. So let's just stipulate that what's being done has no legal basis. And the reason we know that there's no legal basis is the purported kind of excuse that the administration is using. There's an imminent threat. We're in armed conflict with cartels. There was that 2001 authorization to go to war in Iraq that they were using. And now they're saying, well, that we didn't really need an authorization at all. Look, and I think we can stipulate fentanyl is really not coming pretty much from Venezuela, according to press reports. And these boats, which are in these putt-putt motors, couldn't get to the U.S. without being refilled dozens of times if their life depended on it. So we used to use the Coast Guard and the Navy to basically take over little dinky ships like that, but somehow or other, we're macho, we're strong, we're going to show what we mean, so we blow them out of the water. Great, except when they've had to brief Congress, they haven't produced any evidence that these people are actually as bad as has been, said.
Scotty.
Well, here's the deal. We definitely have a drug problem here in America, and I have to applaud the president and this administration for trying, even if it might be something that has not been done before, some different standards to tell those drug lords, do not keep pouring through our borders and putting these drugs into American society. Now, how do they do that? How do they do this approach? I'm on the opposite of you. I think actions have consequences. And if they suspect that you are a drug boat and you've been able to prove that you're not, then guess what? If you get blown out, that's on you. But do we take this to a military escalation for a war? I am all for fighting a war if it's going to stop. As he pointed out, fentanyl is not the major drug that's coming out of Venezuela. It's cocaine. If we are going to be doing this to majorly take out the drugs, then let's do it. But let's do it for those reasons. Let's not do it for the other issues, whether it be regime change or for the oil that Venezuela is so famously known for.
As you said earlier, the American people are sick of being lied to. I think that's a really smart
We need
point.
trust. We've got to develop that trust, both with Republicans and Democrats, with our elected officials. And this is a good chance to do it.
So speaking of trust, healthcare. The healthcare situation in this country is atrocious. People get terrible care, and it's expensive. And this is going to come to a head now, right? Because this has really become the #1 issue. The Democrats, I guess, supporting these subsidies for the ACA. Republicans now need to come up with a counter to that. Richard, what is the Democrats' position coming into this about how to fix our healthcare system? And then we'll hear from Scotty.
Well, certainly, the reason the Democrats have the stronger hand here is when you have Marjorie Taylor Greene complaining that we need to do something about these subsidies, right? And every swing district congressperson basically is saying, no enhanced subsidies, no re-election for me or her. That's kind of the problem that the Republicans are in right now. The Democrats, I think, use this shutdown very effectively to elevate the health care issue to the point now when there will be a vote in the Senate, probably not in the House, to do something about these subsidies. The Republicans will be on the spot. Either they vote for it, in which case there's 74% of the public, 76% of independents support these expanded subsidies. So this is
Richard,
not.
can I just ask you, does it not bother you that we're asking taxpayers to fund a healthcare system that is bad, that is expensive and gives bad care? Aren't we throwing good money after bad?
These people are going to get sick. One of two things is going to happen. Either they're going to have health insurance or they're not. Before the Affordable Care Act came along, these were people that would flood hospitals, and therefore, we did have real problems with people getting care. I think getting 25 more million people with health insurance is to the good. Yes, there are all sorts of problems with our healthcare system, but having 25 million more people have access to healthcare is not a bad thing. Republicans, it always stuck in their craw. They didn't like Obamacare. They wanted to repeal and replace it. The fact that we're still talking about concepts 10 years after.
All right. So let's hear from Scotty. Is there a plan?
Okay, so that's the problem with this. One, you are right and you are wrong. He's talking politics. This should not be political. This should be focused on the people. This should be focused on the doctors that are giving the care and the patients that are receiving it. That is why this is a broken system. And it's been broken because it puts more money into the insurance companies than actually into the care of the people. That's why this system is broken. That being said, Republicans have not presented a good plan to replace. And he is correct from a political standpoint. If they do not present a program that is not going to that is going to replace the money of these subsidies, you are going to see Republicans be completely washed out in the midterm elections, because this is hitting the pocketbooks, not of the lower class, but it is the middle class. This is hitting hard, and it is very dramatic. And I promise you, they not only show up to vote for the enemy or their opposite, they won't show up to even vote at all.
One second. Is there a plan? Do they have one?
They say they do, but I think it is still developing. And as we have found with past legislation, and this is shame on Republicans. Republicans failed this. They knew this was coming. They knew this deadline was coming. Why did they push this off? But as we have found, there is a difference between a congressional plan from Republicans and the White House's plan. Let's hope that they get on the same board sooner rather than later, or you are going to see a complete loss in the midterms for Republicans.
This is not like the price of eggs or beef. We're talking about hundreds or thousands of dollars.
They have gone down.
I'm just saying, we're talking about thousands of dollars of costs that people will have to incur that they're not incurring today. So this is not just some trifling matter. You want to talk about affordability? This is going to be the number one issue, talking about affordability for millions and tens of millions of people, because they simply won't be able to afford health care. And even if these subsidies go away, the rest of the healthcare system, frankly, gets polluted in a bad way in terms of costs going up and service going down.
But the cost he's not talking about is the billions that the insurance companies have been able to pocket off of this.
Totally.
And that's where the issue comes with. Nobody is looking, and I think that's what Republicans want to address. The problem is time is running out. TikTok, January 1st around the corner. We should have been addressing this last summer and having a plan ready to go that would have taken that money from the insurance companies and put it back into, like you said, HSA accounts, those sorts of things. There's solutions out there. They just have to get on the page quickly.
Richard, why are Democrats not taking this moment to talk about a kind of Medicare for all, or a significant overhaul to where, this is one of the number one issues for American voters, that the Democrats still have more trust from the American people than the Republicans. Republicans are flailing. They don't have a plan. Why are the Democrats not thinking bigger than just these subsidies?
Well, for one thing, politically, they don't want to get in the way of Republicans just keeping to dig the hole that they're in, right? And from a process standpoint, the fact of the matter is Medicare for all is kind of a Bernie thing, right? This is not what moderate Democrats are supporting. This big bill that was passed this summer gutted Medicaid, and there will be, again, after the 26 elections, we know it's not going to kick in until then, a lot of problems that we're going to afflict across the country, rural, urban, you name it. So I think Democrats feel that the healthcare system, if you left it alone, actually, yes, there need to be changes in terms of who's getting the money and who's getting the, whether it's insurance companies or whatnot. But as a general matter, they want more people to be insured because that means more people are going to seek help and, keep these preventive kind of systems in place rather than catastrophic consequences, which is frankly what we've been dealing with.
Scotty.
I do have to say, give some major congratulations this week. You did see the passage of hormone replacement therapy or hormone therapy for women. That got passed under a Republican administration. Something Democrats, that are so for women say they are, but yet Republicans were able to face it. And I think that was a huge win. That will speak to Democrats when they say who's actually the ones that are fighting for women's health.
It is interesting. I do feel that the Trump administration a little bit does not talk about some of their bigger accomplishments, bringing down the cost of drugs, which was something Democrats promised to do for a long time. Donald Trump did it and now doesn't talk about it at all. Scotty Nell Hughes, Richard Goodstein, thank you both so much for being here. God bless and protect you. Come back very, very soon. Coming up, not everything is euphoric on the set of the hit HBO show. We'll talk about the supposed rift between Zendaya and Sydney Sweeney next. Welcome back to the show. According to the Daily Mail, the actresses Zendaya and Sydney Sweeney are locked in a bitter feud. Sweeney became a darling of the right after it was revealed that she is a registered Republican in Florida. She also appeared in an ad for American Eagle in which she talked about her great genes. The left attacked the ad as racist while President Trump defended it. And when Sweeney was asked about it by a journalist, whether she wanted to respond or apologize for these crimes, she politely declined, making her even more of a hero to the right. Now, allegedly, Zendaya is refusing to even appear alongside Sweeney on the red carpet to promote their show. Give me a break. You can't stand next to somebody and do your job because they might vote for the other party. If true, this is the exact kind of moral preening and gross entitlement of unbelievably rich and privileged elites that's making Hollywood totally irrelevant these days. Here to discuss is the wonderful and utterly unentitled Adam Mockler. On the smug-o-meter, he is a 0, and thus our favorite young progressive. Adam, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I try not to be smug. So that's I'm glad I'm a 0 on the smug meter.
You totally succeed. So what did you make of this alleged rift?
Honestly, I think people are over-indexing on both of their political beliefs. I'm not sure I believe this reporting at face value. I think this is one of those things where everybody is riling themselves up. People on the left were reactionary with the Sydney Sweeney ad. I don't think there was much to read into it. I think it was just like weird wording. But then people on the right become ultra-reactionary as well and claim Sydney Sweeney is one of theirs. They're like, Sydney Sweeney she's one of ours. She's our far-right queen, our MAGA queen. I don't think she's inherently either. She hasn't said anything inherently political herself, right? Like, she hasn't come out and made some political statement. She acted weird in an interview. So I think people are being quite reactionary. And I guess when they really do their media tour coming up, we'll see if they stand next to each other.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, it's kind of like how our media is framed. Like, I love your videos because I watch them and I get so angry at you, but then I'm like, no, I love Adam. It's such an interesting back and forth in my own emotional reaction to them because, of course, when we put out the media, we're all trying to troll because we're trying to get that attention. How do we balance that with sort of depolarizing, taking down the temperature, which is something I think we all agree we need to do?
I think it's hard in this algorithmic-driven political society that we live in. All of the time, everything is driven by algorithms. And I hate to play the blame game, but Donald Trump is the one who plays it the most at the highest level. He posts like 8 times a day in an inflammatory way that is meant to stir people up. What does he say on the holidays? It'll be like Christmas, and he'll say, Merry Christmas to everybody except for the radical left. He's the master of trolling. So I think it starts with him, and then I'll follow suit. And then we can all follow suit.
All right. So when you look at Democratic leaders, are you drawn to those who resist that urge? There's this guy, Jack Schlossberg, JFK's grandson. Now he's running for Congress in New York. He's a big online troll. He's very young. He knows how to use social media. Is he somebody who's going to speak to Gen Z, or do you find yourself more drawn to people who are kind of more common ground folks reaching across the aisle?
I like both in different scenarios. So Governor Gavin Newsom drew a lot of attention to Prop 50 through some online posts that was very successful, but that wouldn't work for like Andy Bashir, right? It's unique to Governor Gavin Newsom. When it comes to Jack Schlossberg, I thought his online posts were funny. I'm not sure they'll translate over to a congressional race. It's really hard for young people to get a race off the ground when you're relying on social media. Like, I've seen so many young candidates run against a legit lawyer who's like 45, and the young candidate always is in over their head a little bit. So I'm not saying that's going to happen with him, but I'm saying you can't rely too much on online posting when you're just starting out. Trump is unique in that. Governor Newsom is unique in that. Jack Schlossberg probably needs to canvass a lot more than he needs to post.
So one of the topics that's really driving a lot of the conversation right now is young men, the struggle to sort of make it, to achieve the American dream, the problem with housing. This is being used by some to explain the rise of someone like Nick Fuentes, a white nationalist who's getting a lot of, play right now. I personally think there's a little bit of a moral panic happening here. It does seem to me like a lot of the people who are engaging with this far right or, extremist stuff, is there really a big difference between a Hassan Piker's audience and then a Nick Fuentes audience, a Candace Owens audience? Do you see this as a political movement, or do you agree with me that this is more of an online culture type of a story?
I think it's bigger than you think, and I think it's coming from the online. So I think after COVID, there's a lack of socialization in people in my generation. I mean, before it was like that due to the internet, but COVID really accelerated the lack of socialization. So now a lot of young people are struggling to get capital, struggling to invest in the system. If you don't have housing, you're not invested in the system with capital. If you're in healthcare debt or if you're in student debt, you are literally negative in capital. So then you have every incentive to turn against the system. That explains the rise of someone like Hassan Piker, even someone like Zohran Mamdani. And then on the other side, that same struggle, the same lack of socialization, I think also leads to the rise of someone like Nick Fuentes, because he gives an easy scapegoat, an easy out. Oh, look, it's just quote unquote the Jewish people, or it's women, or it's black people. That's the reason your life is bad. I don't know why balloons are coming up right now. I'm sorry.
I love it.
But yeah, but also at the same.
Because you're knocking it out of the park, Adam.
I think that explains the rise of these extremes on both sides. On top of that, foreign actors love to see people like Nick Fuentes gain political power, but don't underestimate his movements. They are gaining actual footing in the Republican Party. Just look at that young Republican group chat full of 20 to 30 to 40-year-olds who were saying crazy stuff about gas chambers.
So what do you think the answer is to something like this?
I think we need moral clarity coming from both parties at the same time. I think when J.D. Vance kind of muddied the waters on that group chat, when J.D. Vance softly played defense for the people in that group chat, that's not moral clarity. And then on the other side, Democrats need to continue to have moral clarity over and over. We need to condemn violence when it happens. I think if leaders from both parties can have moral clarity on what's acceptable and draw those lines, then that'll be good. Like, anti-Semitism has no place in either the Democratic Party, speaking as a young Democrat, I'll always fight against it, of course. And I think young Republicans should always fight against anti-Semitism and any form of bigotry. It's important.
Adam Mockler, God bless and protect you. Come back very, very soon.
Soon. It'll happen soon.
Great. Next up, how the Supreme Court showed the country that we're not as polarized as we thought. We began with what we learned about America this week, and we end with what we're looking forward to next week. You hear a lot about how polarized Americans are, but what if that narrative is false? Every once in a while, a piece of counter-evidence rears its blessed head, and that happened this week when the Supreme Court refused to take up the issue of gay marriage. Gay marriage used to be the defining fight of the culture wars, up there with abortion and guns as the fight defining left versus right. How many people do you know today who are opposed to gay marriage? They are truly few and far between. Even in very religious communities across America, there's support for gay marriage. Despite the prevailing narrative in the liberal media, almost half of Republicans now support gay marriage. It's true that that's fallen from a record high of 55% support in the past few years, but in my view, a lot of that has to do with the overreach of the trans agenda when it comes to children transitioning and trans athletes in women's sports and locker rooms. Meanwhile, when it comes to young Republicans, about 6 in 10 support gay marriage. Despite the Supreme Court being majority conservative, They know what time it is in America, and it's not time to turn on our gay neighbors and their rights. That's what I'm looking for next week as conversations on both sides of the aisle heat up around fixing our broken healthcare system. Who can cut through the noise and find common ground? Always remember, more unites us as Americans than divides us. Thank you all for joining me today. It was an honor to have you with us. May God bless and protect you and the United States of America.